Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, today is the first Friday of the month, and if you follow me, you know that we have converted to a new format here on Chef AJ Live, where 28 wonderful guests that you've seen before, doctors, chefs, and more, have regular shows like the first Monday of the month, the first Tuesday. Well, the first Friday of the month is Dr. Niki Davis. She's an amazing plant-based doctor, and you can actually see her virtually through something called plant-based telehealth, which I'm sure she'll tell you about. And she often does a recipe. Today, she's going to be making a vegan, it's pronounced pho, but it's spelled pho. Don't know why they did that. And her show is called Plant Fueled with Dr. Niki Davis, and she'll explain why the word fueled is in the title. Please welcome her to the show. It's great to see you again.
Great to see you too, Chef AJ. Thank you so much for having me. Well, first of all, yeah, plant fueled. Why are we saying plant fueled? Well, some people probably watching know a little bit about my history, but I started out my career as a mechanical engineer working on the space shuttle program. So very knowledgeable about rocket fuel in my past, and now transitioned over to learning a lot about plant fuel. So I left my job as a rocket scientist. It's been about 15 years now, and then decided to go back and do medical school so that I could help people get well with plant foods. So that's why I'm here today, is to start. I'm really excited, AJ, about the very first episode of my first Friday of the month show. And I'm going to be doing a recipe today. It's kind of like a pho type soup, noodle soup. And on other episodes, I may do more educational topics, Q&As. You're always welcome to ask questions. I can't always guarantee that it'll be an appropriate question if it's a medical question that might need an appointment. But yeah, so I'm really excited to get started on making this soup for you guys.
I got to say, I love your shirt. I love the color. I know Dr. McDougall I don't think he's even making clothing anymore, but that's a very rare one.
I know. I got really lucky. I got this a couple of years ago. I think they were having a kind of a blowout sale on their website, and they only had certain sizes. And I just got lucky that they had one that fit me. So I got it for really inexpensive, and it's one of my favorites. I think the colors are so cute, and I just love the message, because I'm definitely a starchivore, and we're going to be using some starches in this noodle soup today.
Great. Do you ever miss your former career as a rocket scientist?
I would say no, because the thing that I really enjoyed about it was the challenge. I like solving problems, and I feel like I get to do that as a doctor, as a plant-based physician. I'm solving problems every day, and so I mean, my new job, I love so much. I just have to pinch myself every day that I get to do this. There's a reason why, after all the schooling I went through to become a mechanical engineer, that I then went back to do medical school. It's because I'm so passionate about helping people get well through plant foods.
Nice. Well,
so, yeah, don't miss it at all.
Esther says she's fantastic. Look forward to hearing her speak. You know, so many times when we have guests on the show, there's a chat and people say, she's my doctor. She's my doctor. So people really like you. Do you have openings if people wanted to see you through plant-based telehealth? And can you even remember which are the states you're able to see people in?
I think I can remember. So first of all, so the appointments that I offer are lifestyle medicine appointments. So although I am boarded in family medicine, I trained as a family doctor in residency, I practice lifestyle medicine via telehealth. And that's through the company plantbasedtelehealth.com. And you can either get an appointment with me either via their website, or you can actually just go to my website, drnikidavis.com, and you can just click on book an appointment. You can find it there as well. But lifestyle medicine is really for people who are interested in having a healthy lifestyle. So whether you're someone who already has a healthy lifestyle and you just want a physician who's supportive of that, or you're someone who's working on the transition, maybe you haven't even started the transition to eating more plants, the whole gamut of things. And a lot of the things that I do is help get people off medications. People are starting this way of eating and they start noticing they get dizzy and lightheaded, and their medication for blood pressure is now not needed anymore. So we kind of work on getting them off medication safely as they start to transition, because for a lot of people, they notice some differences in their health right away. But yeah, I would love to see people. I know I've got openings available still. So you can go to either of those websites, plantbasedtelehealth.com or drnikidavis.com. And that should be in the show notes as well, the
Yep,
links.
I'm going to work on getting those in. And what states? I know it's California.
Yes. Okay. So I think I know them in alphabetical order too. So Alabama, let's see. Okay. Alabama, California, Florida, Louisiana, Montana, North Dakota, Oregon, South Dakota, Texas, Utah, Washington. And I think there are two more: California, Colorado, if I didn't say those already. California, Colorado, Oregon, Washington. Yeah.
You know, you'll have to create like a little, like,
and Arizona.
Oh, Arizona, fantastic.
Yes.
You know how Dr. Esselstyn has like a little kind of like song almost with the greens? You're gonna have to like maybe put it to music, and then you'll be able to go California, Arizona, you know, to remember.
I should. Unfortunately, my states are always changing, so I have to update the song every time, but I can actually sing all 50 states in alphabetical order. I'm not going to do it for you today, but I taught my son how to do that too. I learned when I was a kid, and it just always stuck.
Wow, that's fantastic.
First of all, what I want to do is just let you know. So a couple of things that I already started doing. So I am heating up a pan here. This is a non-stick pan. The ones that I use are Scan Pan. I think I have a link on my website. But these are a nice non-stick pan that I like. I'm also going to talk about, so I'm going to be cooking up some tofu. And tofu can get sticky even on a non-stick pan. So it's really important that you heat it up ahead of time. So tofu is going to be part of this pho soup today. And like I said, I always heat it up first so that I make sure that it doesn't stick too much. The other option, sometimes I will also just air fry my tofu in I have the Breville. I know you have the same one, AJ, but it's the Breville Pro air fryer toaster oven. It's like some crazy long name, but that works great as well. And when I'm doing tofu, I just cut it up into like squares or rectangles. I throw it in for the air fryer, and I always use parchment paper on mine. But when I put it in there, I do it at 385 for 20 minutes, and it crisps it up really nicely. You don't have to turn them or anything like that, but they just get a little crispy. And honestly, I just do it plain. I don't even squeeze out the water of the tofu. The air fryer really is good about getting rid of all that moisture. And same thing when I cook my tofu on the stove, I just slice it up, throw it on there. I don't do any seasonings or anything like that, and just throw it in the soup. So it's really simple. This pho noodle soup that I'm going to be making today is something that I just kind of came up with based on the things that I have lying around my house. And my husband and son have been asking for it consistently for the last several weeks. And I think probably just because it's cold outside, you know, had a lot of snow today here in Salt Lake City. But yeah, so because they've been asking for it so much, I just figured, why don't I share it with Chef AJ, and you guys could make this at home. This is something that is really, really simple to put together once you have kind of the basics that you can have laying around at really any time. So the main things that you need is just a block of tofu. So I use either firm or extra firm tofu. I also use ramen noodles. So they're not pho noodles, so you can choose what noodles you like, but I really like these. These are the Lotus Foods rice ramen noodles. So they're ramen noodles, but they're made with millet and brown rice. So that's what I like to use for mine. But really you can just find some noodles that you like. If you like them a little bit thicker, the ramen are going to be a little bit of a thinner noodle.
You know, I've seen those at Costco.
Yes, that's actually a great place to get them because they come in a nice big packet. So, and then I also buy this roasted seaweed. So it says premium sushi nori roasted seaweed. And literally that's the only ingredient, organic roasted seaweed. And they just come in these big sheets. So I'll show you what I do with that. And then I've got my pho veggie broth. So this makes it really easy too, because it's just ready to go broth. And there's going to be a link in the show notes for this too, if you want to try to buy this. I've only found it on Amazon, so that's where I buy it. It's a little spendy, but I really like the flavor. So I usually use this one, but there are lots of other, if you just go to the grocery store and look up where the broth section is, they usually have a lot of vegan pho broths that you can look through. You just want to make sure that they don't sneak in some oil, because that's something that people love to sneak into everything is oil. And then your veggies. So I really like baby bok choy. So that's what I'm going to be putting in mine today. But if I don't have any fresh veggies on hand, which sometimes you never know, that happens, I love using frozen broccoli. So at Costco, they have these huge bags of frozen broccoli that come in little individual sized packs. And it's actually enough for my whole family. It's just 3 of us. So I will sometimes just throw that whole thing in my water to start. So that's actually the first thing I'm going to do once I get the tofu going, is we're going to start cooking the veggies in the water that I'm boiling. So just as a reminder, I've got my pan that's already preheating for the tofu. And then this, what I did is, this is just a pot of water that's I'm going to hopefully start boiling soon. But I've added 2 cups of water per person. And the reason I've done that is because the broth that I use, it comes with these little packets. It's just a little, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like a liquidy broth, concentrated broth. And each of these packets you put into 2 cups of water. So I end up using 3 of these packets. And so what I ended up doing was I measured out 6 cups of water in here. I did put a little extra water in there because as it's boiling and cooking the veggies, you're going to lose a little bit of that water. And I'm not straining this at all. This is literally going to be the soup, and I'm just pulling out of it. So that's why I put a little bit of extra water in there, just to make sure that the concentration is right for the broth. And so this is how I cut up my tofu. So like I said, I try to keep things really simple, AJ. Don't have a lot of time, you know, I've got a kid at home, and the quicker that we can throw things together, the better. So for the tofu, I'm just cutting it up into little rectangles. So nothing too crazy here. So that's about the size. It's just these little rectangles, and you could make them into cubes too if you want. But if you have bigger pieces, it's just a little easier when you have to turn them if you're doing this on the stove. Now, some people are going to be using the toaster oven or their air fryer, which is also another great way to do this really easily too.
Yeah, I think that'd be easier actually, don't you?
It would be, but not everybody has an air fryer. So like I said, you can definitely do that. And it's pretty simple, 385 for 20 minutes. But today I wanted to also show the option that if you don't have something like that in your kitchen and you're just going to be using the stove, kind of what that looks like. So really, I just kind of put these on there in a nice hot pan. And then once I notice that they start to get a little bit brown on the bottom, then I'll just turn them.
When you're done cooking, if you don't mind, people send in questions, because you are, after all, a medical doctor. Even though
absolutely. So you can go ahead and ask questions.
Okay, sure. I didn't know if you could do 2 things at once, so I'll ask them.
Well, we'll go for it. Yeah.
Receive, guys always know to send them in advance when we have medical doctors or any doctor. From Brenda. This is a question for Dr. Davis. I've been trying to convert to a plant-based diet. My struggle is gas and bloating from 99% of the cooked vegetables, sweet potatoes, beets, carrots, fermented foods. Potatoes seem to be okay. Any suggestion? This gas has been something terrible to deal with. It's so embarrassing. I find it easier to just not eat, but I get weak and then don't sleep well. I'm 64 years old. I'm 137 pounds, been trying to lose 10 pounds for the last few years and can't seem to ever get past this stage. I take no drugs. Healthy blood glucose is 5.5. I test it every day. Breast cancer in 2003, double mastectomy. I work out every day. And this is a very common thing for people, I think, when they start to transition, don't you think sometimes?
Yeah, I agree. And, without knowing too much about the history, a lot of times people do have issues with kind of bloating and gas and things like that when they start to transition, because changing what you're eating is basically changing what the bacteria in your gut are eating. And when you change what they're eating, the bacteria that prefer certain things, such as fiber, if you're eating more fiber, you're going to end up having more of those bacteria start to flourish. It's very, very common as you're making changes to your diet that you're going to notice some changes, some things like that. Now, if it continues, then you definitely want to kind of look into seeing, is there anything else going on that could be causing these issues? But as far as kind of getting going on a plant-based diet, something that I'll recommend to people that you can try is, it's not Beano, but it's Beanzyme. That's the vegan version of Beano. And so if you're having issues with, say, especially beans or legumes, that could be something that you could try. The other thing is, a lot of people have issues with beans kind of out of the gate because, those can definitely cause some gas and bloating and things like that. But lentils seem to be a little bit better for that. So if you are having an issue, I would say just start with something like lentils until your body starts to adjust. It just takes an adjustment period. But for most people, that's just, it just takes some time as the bacteria that live in your gut start to change as your diet changes.
This idea that Dr. Will B talks about going low and slow.
Yes, exactly. Yep. So introducing things, if you're noticing that you're having issues with certain food, just introduce it more slowly. So instead of having it every day, maybe you have it once a week for a while and then add it another day a week, just as you start to tolerate it more and more.
Yeah, but don't give up.
And no, don't give up. It's definitely worth it. You'll get there. I do want to just mention, I'm just cutting up some baby bok choy right now. I just kind of cut it up into bite-sized pieces, and I'm watching my tofu over here. I don't think I mentioned, but I've got it just on medium heat. And then I've got my water starting to boil. I've got a ton of bok choy here, so I'm probably not going to add all of this. This is something that I really like to have in my kitchen. This is just kind of like a little scoop. So as you are cooking up veggies, you can just kind of scoop it on there to be able to put it into your water. And I add this first. So I'm going to add this bok choy first, just to let it start to kind of soften up a little bit before I add the noodles, because the noodles are really quick cooking. So once the bok choy has had a chance to soften up a little bit, then that's when I add my noodles. Same thing with the broccoli. If I do broccoli instead, I just throw the broccoli in first, let it cook up a little bit, maybe until it gets like a little bit that like nice bright green color, and then I'll add the noodles.
Okay. Well, I've got another question for you from Susan. Does Dr. Davis recommend treating osteoporosis? And what is her opinion of Prolia? I've been whole food plant-based for 10 years.
Yeah, that's a tricky question. So I would say that out of the gate, I'm not usually a huge fan of the bisphosphonate medications. But it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. It really kind of depends on your history. And I do have several patients who have osteopenia, osteoporosis. So osteopenia is kind of like the precursor to osteoporosis. It's just not quite as bad as osteoporosis. But I've had success with helping people change their lifestyles. So not only their physical activity, but also their diets, and had their numbers improve on their DEXA scans. So it's definitely possible to improve your numbers. And I always like to give people that ability to use lifestyle to make those kinds of changes. But as far as the medications go, that's usually a one-on-one discussion based on what your history is. Have you had fractures in the past? We can even use algorithms. I'm an engineer, so I love getting into the details of that and using the numbers to kind of decide whether or not it makes sense for you to start a medication or not. So it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. But overall, I'm a lifestyle medicine doctor, and that's what I choose to start with.
People get so freaked out about numbers, but I'm trying to remember how Dr. McDougall says it. It's not the number. If you're not having fractures, doctors are they want to just treat numbers.
Yes, right, exactly. And although I do love the numbers, I try to stay away from them for the most part, because really, if you're feeling good and you're not having any issues, I hate to all of a sudden start you on a medication that may or may not help you. Even if, let's say that, you're someone who could possibly benefit from starting a medication like that, there's still what we call a number needed to treat. So let's say you have 100 people and they're all going to start this medication Prolia. Well, I don't know what the exact number is needed to treat, but basically what it is you have to give a certain number of people a medication for one person to benefit. Okay. You don't just give a medication to someone and automatically that person is going to benefit from that medication. It might be that you give it to, 100 people and 5 people benefit. So do you want to take it knowing that you could be one of those 5 people who could maybe prevent a fracture? Or do you want to take your chances and say, I'm probably one of the 95, out of 100 that is not going to benefit from this medication, and I'd rather not take on the risks of that medication. So I really like to talk through people with that, just to kind of help them make that decision. I give them all the information and then let them ultimately decide what they're comfortable with.
Great, thank you.
And I'm just flipping the tofu right now, so you can see it's kind of gotten a little bit of that nice golden brown color on it. These cook up really fast on here. We're just going to flip all these over. And then it looks like our bok choy is looking really good too. It's getting nice and green.
That's another thing you can get at Costco, at least at our Costco, baby bok choy.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, I wonder if they have that at my Costco, because I'm always struggling to find the baby bok choy. Sometimes I find just the regular big bok choy, but I really like the baby bok choy the best.
Okay, I like the baby everything better. Baby arugula, baby kale. It seems like it's less bitter if it is. Yeah, I totally agree on that. Yeah. Well, here's a question from Jean about sugar. She says, does Chef AJ know? Nope, I don't. That's why we're asking the doctor. As far as you know, is the sugar from dates less likely to increase cholesterol as opposed to other sugar sources? I did not know. Does sugar even increase cholesterol?
Well, not usually, no. Like when we think of cholesterol increasing, we think of cholesterol in your diet, first of all, because I don't know if people are aware, but your body actually makes cholesterol. So your body makes all the cholesterol that you need. You don't need to get any extra in your diet. It's not essential. Usually it's going to be dietary cholesterol that increases it, or dietary fat. So I've had several patients who are already vegan. So they're eating a vegan diet, but that might include, vegan butters and cheeses and things like that. And their cholesterol is high. Once they get rid of the vegan processed foods, especially the higher fat foods, their cholesterol improves. So it's both the cholesterol and then the fat in the diet. But sugar, not necessarily. Sugar is not one of those things that if you eat in excess is typically converted to fat easily. Your body doesn't want to do that usually because it prefers to use glucose as the primary energy source in your body. So yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a little update. So tofu is almost done. The bok choy is looking good. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rice. So for 3 of us, I do 5 of these. These are just like the little noodle squares. So 5 for 3 people. So it means you get a little bit more than 1 of these, but that seems to be a really good amount of food. In fact, there's probably a little bit too much, but I always like to make sure that we have plenty to eat. And that is one of the beautiful things about eating this way is you eat until you're full. You're not trying to measure out how much food you're going to eat. You wait until you're hungry and then you eat when you're full. And so I always like to make sure that everybody has plenty of food because you want to make sure that you're eating until you're comfortably full. Okay, so I just added those 5 packs in there. And then the other thing I'm going to do is start adding in the pho concentrate. So this is just the broth concentrate that comes in these little packets. And like I said, I'm doing 1 of these. The link for this is in the show notes. So this is the one that I get on Amazon, but you can use any broth that you like. Get something that's shelf stable so that you can just use it whenever you're ready to make this. I don't know if you can see that, but it's just this basically thick concentrate. And I just put it right in there. So I'm going to do one of these for every 2 cups of water. And about 2 cups of water is usually what I use for each person's bowl. So you'll just have to kind of change this up as, you know, depending on how many people will be eating it.
It sounds so yummy. You know what? I love to make noodles out of zucchini. Have you ever done that?
Oh yeah, I have done that. Yeah, I've got one of those spiralizers. I think I actually made, I don't know if you remember, this was a while ago, but I had made some spiralized hash browns on your show. I think it was a couple of years ago. But I really like to spiralize potatoes and then cook them up in like my little panini press and just clamp that down. And they're so good and crispy and delicious.
It seems like you and I could swap kitchens and we do just fine. We have a lot of panini press too. And, you know, sometimes it's hard to justify an expense for something that you don't use often, whereas the Breville I use every day, the Instant Pot every day. But the panini press is so fun to press things in a panini press. It's a different experience than if you press them in a waffle iron.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think it's, you know, we love potatoes just like you, AJ. You know, we're a house of potato lovers. And every so often, just, you know, it'll take a little bit longer, but making some fresh hash browns that you use in that panini press is just like, oh, it's just heaven. It's so delicious. All right, I'm just mixing up the noodles here, just kind of help separate them a little bit. But these noodles cook really quickly. I think the bag, it says like 3 minutes. Oh, ready in 4 minutes. So it's pretty quick. One of the things that I like to add is sushi paper. So this is like nori. And what I do is I fold it. So I fold it in half and then I fold it again. And then I just use my kitchen scissors. So then I'm going to just cut up on both sides where it's folded to make kind of these long strips. Okay, and then I'll take those strips and just kind of cut them to where you get these, just kind of these small pieces of the nori. So I just cut those up into a bunch of little strips. This just makes it really easy to throw it in there. And then you've got this big strip left over. And then I just cut them like this.
People are wondering, when will we see the plant-fueled cookbook?
I don't know. It would be pretty basic because I really like to keep things really simple. It's going to be a lot of mashed potatoes and easy things.
While you're cutting the nori, Charles, who's watching live, says, should we be concerned about the high iodine levels in sea vegetables such as seaweed and kelp noodles?
Well, you need iodine. So it's really important that you get iodine. Now, a lot of people are going to get that through their diet because they're getting, you know, salt that's added to things that has iodine in it, iodized salt. But if you're not getting iodized salt, then you do need to make sure that you're getting some iodine. And this is a really good way to get a little bit of extra. You know, it's not a lot, but it's giving you a little bit of that iodine in there. So I think it's great. Now, if you're worried that you're eating a ton of this stuff and you're worried about your iodine levels and maybe you have a thyroid issue, you can always check your iodine levels. It's not the most fun test. You have to collect your urine for about 24 hours. But it is something that you can check if you're worried about it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn off these guys. This is my tofu that's cooking here. Just make sure it's not getting stuck and it's looking good. Sometimes it still gets a little bit stuck there, but I'll just kind of show you what. So like I said, like the tofu, I don't press it or anything like that. I literally just cut it up into these little pieces and just flip it over once and it gets nice and crispy on both sides. And that's just going to go straight into the soup once I ladle it out. So now I'm just going to, basically the next thing I do is I just keep checking my noodles until they're nice and soft.
One of the viewers, maybe they tuned in late, at saying, well, with the recipe posted, and you explained it's not really a recipe per se.
Right. And really what it is if you use this broth, it's 1 packet of this with 2 cups of water. That's 1 serving. And if you wanted to just do 1 serving, I'd say you do about 1.5 of the little squares of the ramen noodles, and then just veggies, so you can really kind of make it your own, and it doesn't have to be an exact recipe. This is just kind of something that I had these noodles laying around, and, a nice warm soup sounded good. My mom had mentioned to me that she'd found this broth concentrate that she really liked. And so I tried it out and I said, oh, that's really delicious. I like that. So now we just make this noodle soup all the time because it's really simple and easy and delicious. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you. So what I do is I end up, here, let's use this other one. So I just scoop the noodles. You get the bok choy in there. You've got some of that nori paper. And I just try to just eyeball it for each person to get about the same amount.
Kim wants to know. Oh, sorry. Kim wanted to know.
Oh, I was just going to. Oh, go ahead, Chef AJ.
Okay. Kim wanted to know if nori tastes fishy.
I mean, it kind of just tastes like seaweed. I don't know if you've had seaweed before, but I mean, it does have a little bit of a sea smell, I guess, but I love it. It's just kind of, it's got maybe like a little bit of an umami kind of flavor to it. But it's something that I think gives you a little bit more nutrition, and it gives you a little bit more flavor. So yeah, we really enjoy it. What I was going to say is, this is something that's a really nice, easy way to get some of these greens into your kids' diet. So I'm always trying to find ways to get greens into my son's diet, and he just slurps up this soup and asks for more. So it's perfect. And he's getting healthy tofu. Tofu is something that's really health promoting. It can be a little bit higher in fat, so it's not necessarily something you want to have at every single meal. Just thinking of the calorie density if you're worried about weight. But for instance, women who eat more soy products have less breast cancer. So it definitely can be health promoting. So what I did here is I just added in some of the tofu. I got the noodles and the bok choy. And then I just go in and just kind of scoop out some of this broth and add it over the top. And I'll come over and show it to you. Oh, it smells so good.
Randy's saying she would love a cookbook of easy books.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, I really, I think it's fun to make recipes that are a little bit more complicated here and there. But for the most part, I really gravitate towards things that are more simple, things that I can just grab and make easily. So this probably took me longer just because I've been talking to you, but really the thing that takes the most time is probably just getting the tofu ready. And like we had mentioned, if you just put that in your Breville and just let it go, you can do something else while that's cooking. It takes about 20 minutes for the tofu. All right, so let's see if I can show this to you here. Okay, there you go. And I think I've got a picture of this on my Instagram too. And I think a lot of people are really interested in it because, it's easy and really yummy. But that's just kind of what it looks like. So you've got these delicious noodles in there. That's the starch. You got the delicious bok choy, and then these nice crispy tofu that's in there.
Yum. Nothing like crispy tofu. Looks delicious, as they say. I got another question. This is kind of vague in that somebody's asking for their sister, but I'll give it a go. And of course, if you can't answer something, please just tell us. This is from Laura, and she says, my sister is a slender 66-year-old woman who has been active her entire life, but eats the sad 95% of her meals. She has super low blood pressure and actually passed out recently waiting in a checkout line at a department store. Her blood pressure drops after meals. Is diet the cause of this, or what is?
So it's very natural for us as humans to have lower blood pressure. All of us most people know that a high blood pressure, you're not wanting your blood pressure to get over about 120/80. So when people say to me, I'll say, so what has your blood pressure been like recently? And they'll say, well, it's always been normal, 120/80. Well, 120 over 80 is actually getting to the point where you're at that pre-hypertensive stage. So you're getting to where your blood pressure, although is technically in the normal range, is still kind of heading up towards the hypertensive stage. And what I see in my practice with people who are whole food, plant-based, staying away from oil, their BMI is in the normal range. Usually the blood pressure is more like in the 90s to 100s, maybe 110s, over 60s to 70s. So naturally it should be low. Now, it's also very natural to pass out if you're doing something that is, your knees are locked, you're not allowing that kind of blood flow. If you are dehydrated, you're hot. I mean, this happens all the time when people are waiting in line at like Disneyland. You're standing in one position too long. You haven't been drinking enough water. So it can happen that you can pass out. I would suggest that if she's currently eating the standard American diet, eating a plant-based diet is not going to make things worse for her. It's only going to make things better for her. But I definitely think that as she's making that transition, working with a plant-based doctor in her area would make a lot of sense, just to make sure that she does things safely.
Yeah. I don't even know if she wants to make the transition. She's just trying to find out why she out. That's funny. Hey, time for you to bust some soy myths. The great book about this is Your Body in Balance by Dr. Neil Barnard. But there's two questions. One from Mimi, how often can you eat tofu? And a question, let's see, where did it go? My naturopathic doctor told me to stay away from soy, that it disrupts the hormones. Is that true?
Okay, so the first question, how often can you have soy? So soy products, if you're going to have soy products, I recommend that you stick with the minimally processed soy products. So that's the soybean or edamame, that's tofu and tempeh, and then soy milk. I recommend that people stay away from the more processed products that say like soy protein isolate, because it's processed. Now, there is a place in this world for those kinds of products. If you're someone who's eating the standard American diet and this makes it easier for you to get off of meat and transition to more vegan meats first before going plant-based, great. I'm a huge fan of that. But if you're looking to really improve your health, those things aren't going to improve your health. They'll improve, the health of the animals on the planet and our planet itself. But for humans, if you are consuming processed vegan foods, it's not really doing anything good for your own health. So tofu, if you're sticking to the more minimally processed tofu, it really kind of depends. I would say, a serving a day is great. If you are someone who's really struggling with weight loss, sometimes you may want to just consider maybe doing a little bit less of that, because it can be a little bit higher in fat. Or maybe just sticking to soybeans instead of like tofu or something like that. Tofu is something that I don't have every single day, but I have it fairly regularly. It is something that, like I said, if you're struggling with weight, I usually just talk to people one-on-one about this and make a decision whether or not it's something that you want to maybe stay away from for the time being until you get to your goals, or if a little bit is okay. As far as the myth of soy disrupting your hormones, that is a myth. It has been busted, so it's absolutely not true. Soy does contain like estrogen-like materials in it, but it does not work the same way that estrogen does in your body. In fact, it almost works to block the receptors that are usually used by your own hormones that are going through your body, like estrogen. And that's what we actually think might be the reason why soy is actually beneficial for helping lower your risk for breast cancer, because of that blocking of the receptors. So it's absolutely health promoting food. And if it's something that you're struggling with either hormone problems or your weight, then just talk to one of the plant-based doctors and we can kind of make a decision on how to go forward with what you're eating.
Great. They have tofu that's made out of, for people that can't have soy for whatever reason, out of pumpkin seeds, they call it pumpfu, and out of hemp seeds, they call it hempfu.
Have you tried them?
I haven't yet because I'm so fat phobic. I'll be honest. Every time I try to introduce even a little bit, my weight goes up like 5 pounds. But I would try them. Haven't yet. But I'm not opposed to trying it.
Yeah, and yeah, because it probably is going to be a little bit higher in fat if it's made from seeds. But that's fascinating. Pumpkin seeds are something. They have a lot of good selenium in them. Pumpkin seeds also, there was a study on pumpkin seed oil. I don't recommend pumpkin seed oil, but pumpkin seeds instead. But on pumpkin seed oil helping with hair regrowth.
Well, do you know that we learned that yesterday from Dr. Jessica Krantz? Seriously.
Are you serious?
That is so funny that it came up yesterday. It was a question on hair loss, and she talked about pumpkin seed, the research. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So and the research is based on people taking pumpkin seed oil. It wasn't very much, and I don't remember the exact amount, but it was a really small amount. And so my thought is, well, if that's something that you struggle with, of course, you want to try to find out first, why are you having hair loss? Because there are a lot of different things that can be causing that can be reversible. But if it's maybe, a lot of people that go through stressful situations, or maybe they had COVID, you can have a little bit of hair loss with any sort of stressful situation, physically or mentally, that having that hair regrowth, basically the study showed that a little bit of that pumpkin seed oil helped people. This is, subjective, that people are saying that, yes, I had more hair regrowth with using that. But I usually just tell people, just add some pumpkin seeds over your salad if you want to try that to see if it helps you.
That sounds great. So here's another question about the numbers. Sandy says, do I need to be concerned about the bottom number of my blood pressure? I've been 110/54 lately.
So, that's going to be a personal thing, but as long as you're not having symptoms, having a blood pressure that's a little bit on the low end is just fine. I would definitely recommend, though, that's just general information, not medical information. But if you want to talk to one of the plant-based doctors about your blood pressure and take some additional readings, it kind of depends on the time of day that you're taking it. It depends on the cuff that you're using and how you're using it. So there are ways that you can be checking your blood pressure at home that might be able to be optimized to make sure that you're getting the correct numbers. Some people just live at a lower blood pressure, and a number like that seems fine to me. If the lower number is getting much lower than that and you're having symptoms of lightheadedness or dizziness, then you definitely want to talk to somebody just to see, because there's something else could be going on that could be affecting that.
Thank you. So your son was on the show once. I think you were making some hash browns. And Randy says, now that he's getting older, is he still comfortable around his friends being a whole food plant-based eater?
Yes, thankfully he is. He still loves eating plant-based. It's kind of fun because as he gets more mature, we have more mature conversations about it. And we put everything out there about why we've decided as a family to eat not only whole food plant-based, but also we're vegan. I was vegan first. I've always been an animal lover. And when I found out what was happening to animals, I just said, there's no way that I can support this anymore. So we talked to him about that, not only veganism, but also the health aspect. So he knows a lot about what makes eating plants healthy. And when he goes to make choices for himself regarding food, he's actually starting to understand, like, oh, this is not a healthy choice. This is a healthy choice. And he likes to talk to his friends about what he eats because, inevitably kids are going to ask him questions about his diet and, well, why don't you eat this? But a lot of times he has kids that are asking to try his food at school or trade things at school because I send him with really good stuff. I send him with this kind of soup to school and he just absolutely loves it. So thankfully it's been an ongoing conversation with him throughout his life. And it's been great. He's never been a picky eater. I think I mentioned this to you, AJ, on another episode that we had together, but he will happily eat up a big green salad, no problem. And I don't know a lot of kids out there that'll do that unless that's just their normal life. Like, this is what we offer to you and this is what you eat. And he loves it.
Wow. What's his favorite foods? Are they the same, or has he expanded his repertoire?
So, it's funny. His grandma asked him the other day, what are your favorite foods these days? And he mentioned this soup. But one of his favorite things is just tofu. He will eat it. I call it raw, but basically out of the package without having it cooked at all. And he just loves that. So that, and then he really loves broccoli. When we have something that normally I put broccoli in and we don't have the broccoli, he's upset about it. So he's just a really good eater. We're really lucky.
Grandma vegan too?
I would say that she's 95%. Yep. And she was the one that when I started going plant-based was saying, oh, how can you do that? Don't you need just a little bit of yogurt? Or, you've got to have something. How are you going to get your calcium? And asking me all these questions. And then I started giving her books to read, and she started to say, oh, okay, this makes sense. So yeah, she's in fact, she gives me a lot of ideas for stuff to eat. So, she's the one that turned me on to this pho broth that I really like. And she's always sharing new recipes with me that she makes, from forks over knives and things like that.
Let's get her on the show and we'll do an intervention for the last 5%.
Yes, right.
Just kidding.
Now, if we could just get my dad won't eat plant-based at all, but he just turned 92. So he's doing well.
Wow.
I've got good genes.
Thankfully, that's amazing. So here's a question from Samantha. What is your opinion on getting a hernia fixed if it's not dangerous? Is the surgery worth it?
So hernia is one of those things that if it's an emergency, you definitely have to obviously have surgery for that, because you can get some, there can be some problems with that, things getting stuck in places that shouldn't. But if it's just elective, that's a case-by-case basis. It kind of depends on where it is, if it's something that you don't like the look of. But as long as it's not something that's getting stuck constantly and isn't an emergency or dangerous, it's not something that you need to do necessarily. It can be an elective procedure.
Great. There's a viewer that's asking, what do you do if your whole family isn't on board? And I think they're asking from the perspective that it's difficult for them to have hyperpalatable foods in the house when they're trying to make changes in their weight and their health.
Yeah, great question, because one of the predictors that I see of success in eating this way is your environment. And I know you talk a lot about that too, AJ, but having those types of foods that you don't want to be eating in your home makes it really difficult to stick to this way of eating. The way that I went about it, I was the first, when I met my now husband, he wasn't eating this way at all. He was eating more of a standard American diet. And honestly, it was just about that, well, this is what I'm making. And you can eat this or you can make your own thing. And so I would make this, and he ended up saying, well, this is really good. I really like this. And it just, over time, being exposed to it and seeing that it was something that is not only delicious, but sustainable for him, he went plant-based. So it was just more of exposing him to it. And I try to be careful about not getting too on people about it, because people can get really defensive about it. And really just kind of showing people that this is possible. So I think that, making it to where you are the person doing the grocery shopping and the cooking, if possible, so that you get to decide what's in the house. And then the other thing is to be really open with your family members, because I have patients who I see who are really sick. They're really sick. And this isn't just a matter of, oh, I'm going to overeat those cookies if you have them in the house. No, this is something that can actually take years off your life. This is serious business. And so really having those hard conversations with the people who you live with and saying, my doctor, and I tell people, you can use me, say, my doctor said, I cannot have this in my house anymore, so I need to get rid of it. You really have to take your health seriously and talk to the people in your home about that. Because it's your life, it's your one and only life. And I think that if the people who you live with, are not supportive, that just makes it really, really tricky. That makes it really difficult. And I do have people who will say, well, I keep my things separate and they keep it in a locked drawer. And, there are things that you can try like that, but ultimately you've got to get your environment to match what you want your life to be like.
Yeah, that's what Adam Sood says. Your environment has to look like your goal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think people's personality, they're different, because certain personalities just would say, hey, not going to be in my house. And other people just aren't able to do that,
Yep. But,
Yeah.
and I think I heard you say this once, Chef AJ, that, your willpower is the same as all of our willpower. None of us have better willpower than others. And if you're relying only on willpower, it's so hard to be successful. Setting up your environment for that success is how you're really successful. Because if I come home and I'm starving and I haven't eaten all day, and there's something sitting out for me that's really easy to grab that's unhealthy, I might grab that. No matter what my background is or how much I know that that's not good for me. But if I have, the ingredients to make a really easy noodle soup that I can just throw together in 15, 20 minutes, that takes care of that. So you've got to find those things that allow you to stick to this no matter what. Because when you're stressed, you're overworked, you haven't slept, you're going to reach for those foods. And if they're in your home, it's really hard to get away from those, no matter who you are.
I think it really is. That's why Dr. Lyle says we must work harder on our environment than we do ourselves. And I always recommend people that don't have one, have a session with him and he'll help you negotiate one. I don't think I would have been successful in an unclean environment. I really don't, because when I'm hungry, I see it. I'm on the seafood diet. I see it, I eat it.
Yeah, because you're human, just like all of us. We're all human. And that's what we're meant to do, right? When you're starving, you need to survive. You need to find foods. And unfortunately,
we always go for the most
foods.
calorically dense food. We always go for the most calorically dense food in any environment, and people get mad at me because they say, well, you're saying I'm going to fail. I'm not saying that at all. It's interesting because I felt so validated when Esther Loveridge, who lost 140 pounds on the starch solution in her 70s, said that, she was going to show me and keep a box of See's candy in the house. And she did for 3 years until the day she ate it, So I always say, you can't eat something that's not there, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon it will call to you. Your dog gets sick or something. It's just so much easier to not have it there. You don't have to think about it.
Well, and AJ, there's so much power behind this, because I have a lot of patients that come to me saying there's something wrong with me. I failed again. I can't do this. Why can other people do it and I can't? And it's not about you. Right? It's not about you. It's your environment. Unfortunately, we just live in this world today where we have access to all this junk food, poor food for your diet, around us all the time. And we need to kind of put ourselves in these little bubbles of safety so that we can have healthy foods available to us. It's just unfortunate that that's just the way that life is these days. But it's not about being a failure. It's not about not having enough willpower. It's not about being able to see those cookies and say, oh, I'm not going to have one. You need to build it into your environment. And it's also not about perfection either. If you struggle, you might, you go to a work party and there's something there, you might have something. But if you can make most of your environment safe and have those healthy foods available to you, and you're doing that 99% of the time, you're going to be much more successful. Even if you have those occasional indulgences, it really matters most what you do most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question about what you think of another doctor's protocol, and I don't want to pit one doctor against each other, especially when they both have shows on this network. So I'm going to just make it more generally what your protocol is for reversing autoimmune disease. Hey, Billy Grislack is in the house. Woohoo!
So my protocol is first plant-based, whole food plant-based. Okay. Starch-based, starchivore. So focusing on lots of nutritious foods, whole plant foods, that's where I start. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that, eating plants in their whole form. And starch is important. If you know Dr. McDougall, starch is really important because it's something that keeps us satiated. It helps, you be happy with the food that you're eating because it's filling. It's delicious. So you need to make sure that you're doing starch-based, whole food, plant-based. Now, if you're doing that already and you're still struggling with autoimmune problems, sometimes using another protocol makes sense. I'm guessing that you're talking about Dr. Goldner. I refer people to her all the time. She does really great with her protocol on helping people with autoimmune, doing basically like hyper-nourishment. And I'm all for that, getting lots of greens and lots of antioxidants. So absolutely there are other protocols out there that can help with autoimmune. And I love just kind of sitting down with people and talking about, because there are a lot of different autoimmune disorders out there, and figuring out for them what is going to work best for them.
Great. Well, so that was the person you were asking, and since you favorably responded, that's great. One more question, just for fun. Everybody gets asked, and you've probably been asked before, but what does Dr. Niki Davis eat in a day?
So, okay, so breakfast, and I'm one of those where I will eat when I'm hungry and I stop when I'm comfortably full. So if I'm not hungry in the morning, I'm not going to force myself to eat. So there are some mornings that I don't eat until a little bit later. Some mornings I wake up and I'm starving, so I will eat. But usually breakfast is going to be either potatoes. I like, sometimes I'll even have like a cereal, like the Plant Strong makes a cereal that I like, the Big Bowl, or there's another one that's Ezekiel that we'll use sometimes with just some oil-free oat milk and some berries. We make oatmeal with berries a lot. And then I love smoothies too. So I really like doing a daily morning smoothie. I don't do it every single day, but I like to add in smoothies because it's another way to sneak in greens for my son. So I do greens and berries and frozen bananas and some flaxseed and then some oat milk. And we'll do those smoothies a lot as well. Lunch is something like this. I mean, it could be just a noodle soup. I keep it really basic. I do a lot of potatoes, sweet potatoes. I like cruciferous veggies. So like you, Chef AJ, a lot of times I'm doing like some sweet potatoes with broccoli. I really like just doing rice with broccoli. So brown rice with broccoli or barley with broccoli. So I don't get super complicated. For the sauce, I might do like a little low sodium soy sauce over the top. I also get some of the Well Your World sauces that I'll use occasionally. I also like to try to get a salad in every day. And that could just be greens, because if I'm in a hurry, I'm just throwing greens in there. And I really like the California balsamics like you do. So I'll just do that. Or I might, if I want it a little bit more filling, I'll put some beans over the top, like chickpeas or lentils. I'll even put some grains in my green salads as well. And then, dinner is kind of similar to lunch, where it's just kind of some sort of a grain or a starch, greens, beans, and veggies. And then we love fruit in our house. So we try to keep fruit, all the time. We got our big bowl of bananas all the time. Oranges, kind of depends on the season. But we also love berries. So we always have frozen berries that we can add to things. So I try to just keep it really simple, but filling.
Great. What question, what plant-based milk is your favorite?
So I would say that the one that we're really enjoying right now is Oatly. They have a low-fat one that's in the white box, and that one's oil-free. That's probably our favorite one right now. The other one that I really like is, so we use oat milk. That's our favorite. The reason I like oat milk is it's low in fat. And I think it's a nice kind of just a bland flavor. So you can add it to things without it kind of changing the flavor. The other one I like is from Trader Joe's. So Trader Joe's has its own brand of oat milk, and it's literally just oats and water. So it's nice. They don't have, add any of those extra ingredients. There's another brand that we like that's Pacific. So Pacific has an oat milk that's oil-free as well. And there's actually, I'm surprised, but there are more and more of these oat milks coming out where they're not adding in the oil to try to, because I think that the reason they add the oil, it obviously adds fat to it. Maybe they think the flavor is better with the extra fat, but it also helps froth milk too. So if you're using oat milk to make like a latte, it helps froth it up easier. But there was one more that I found, Planet Oat, that also has an oat milk that's oil-free.
Nice. Very cool. Someone's saying they use coconut milk. That's really high in fat.
It's really high in fat and it's really high in saturated fat. So I tend to not recommend coconut milk or oil at all. The occasional coconut flakes here and there, I think, is okay. You know, you're still getting saturated fat. I mean, unfortunately, coconut is one of those things that's over 90% saturated fat. So it's really not necessarily a health food. I think if you're going to do it a little bit on occasion, then just doing the flakes, that's the whole food. But I don't usually recommend using coconut milk in anything. I've actually seen patients where they were eating really clean, but they used quite a bit of coconut milk. And once they got that out of their diet, their cholesterol improved finally.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Susanna says she's so happy you have a monthly show. So am I. Thank you for accepting the offer. It's great to see you. And it's so funny that exactly, it's like reinforcement. Dr. Krantz said yesterday about pumpkin seeds growing hair. You said it today. That's so, now we know the answer when people ask.
Yep.
Thanks. Well, we look forward to having you back the first Friday of next month. And I wish you and your family a very happy, healthy New Year.
Thank you, AJ. It's so good to see you as always. And I'm just so thrilled that you're allowing me to come on here and get to share what I love and why I left rocket science, because I love plants.
Thank you. And don't forget, she can be your doctor. Just look at the link below. She's in many, many states. Thanks, everyone, for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow for another fabulous show. We're going to be debuting the culinary medicine show with the chef doc, Dr. Colin Zhu. He's a doctor and a chef.